Norway declared neutrality during World War II, but it was ignored. The Germans purchased iron ore from Sweden, 85% of total German use, for weapon production, which was transported by train to Narvik and shipped from its port to Germany. Stopping the German ships before they could take the ore from the port became vital for Great Britain. They were confident that this would weaken their opponent. The rival countries began attacking each other's ships. Britain laid ship mines all around Norwegian waterways in 1940, and Norway was dragged into the war. When the Germans invaded Norway, the Norwegian army was underprepared. Since they lacked high-end machine guns like the Germans, they planned to defeat them by shutting off the iron ore supply. Corporal Gunnar Toft was looking forward to going back to Narvik to celebrate his son's birthday. When he returned, he was told that all of his leaves had been cancelled and that he needed to report to the base. Disappointed, Gunnar tried to persuade Major Sigurd Umdal to let him return home. He was allowed to leave, but only under the condition that he return to the base by midnight. Gunnar was delighted. He gave over his stuff to his friends and going home with a gift in his hand. Ingrid worked as a hotel staff member and translator. She translated the meeting between the mayor of Narvik and the German delegates. He requested that Germany and Britain respect Norway's neutral stance. While translating the mayor's speech, Ingrid caught a sight of her husband. She couldn't contain her joy and went to the kitchen when the meeting was over. Gunnar and Ingrid were happy to be together again, and even though he had to leave before midnight, she felt relieved knowing he would be around. Their house was just beyond the hotel's backyard, and Gunnar found his young son spending time with his grandfather. The sight of a toy train excited little Ole, and his father, Aslak, was relieved to see him safely come home. While Ingrid worked at the hotel, Gunnar helped Ole construct a little village for his toy train. After making love, Ingrid and Gunnar awoke to the sound of explosions. Gunnar rushed to the base and discovered that the Germans had begun to invade the town. Under Major Umdal's command, the Norwegian forces backed off from striking the German troops. He refused to fight with them, knowing that it would result in a terrible bloodshed and the total destruction of the town due to bomb shells. Instead, he requested his soldiers to follow him as he planned an operation to drive the Germans out of Narvik. Meanwhile, Ingrid maintained her composure at work. She had reasons to hate the Germans, but she continued to offer them hospitality. She believed it was her responsibility to serve the hotel's guests. The Germans wanted to arrest the British hotel guests. While she maintained a friendly relationship with the Germans, she assisted the English representatives in their safe escape. She couldn't offer them a place to stay, so she asked them to hide in the forest cabin. She knew that the Englishmen could help their country overcome Germany, and she wanted to do her part to support them. She decided to flee Norway with her son because the situation became out of control. Aslak helped them in boarding a train to Sweden. Gunnar had planned to blow the railway bridge, but he had no idea that his own family would be using it. The Norwegian corporation, led by Major Umdal, wanted to destroy the Nordal Bridge. The rail route transported iron ore from Sweden to Narvik, and the only way to prevent the Germans from seizing Narvik was to destroy the entire link. Gunnar had worked on the Ofoten lines and was tasked with finding the dynamite. The bridge was designed to be demolished, and discovering the explosives was critical to the success of their strategy. He asked Aslak for help finding the dynamite, and during the conversation, he told Gunnar that Ingrid and Ole were on a train that would pass through the bridge. After hearing the information, Gunnar was hesitant to proceed with the plan. Soon, he spotted civilians walking on the bridge and discovered Ingrid and Ole among them. He discovered that the Germans forced the Norwegians to vacate the train, and they were forced to walk the remaining route. Gunnar persuaded Ingrid and Ole to walk down the tunnel to cross the border while he finished the assignment. He moved around the bridge to set the dynamite. When the Germans opened fire, the dynamite exploded, but Gunnar had no chance to flee. He jumped from the bridge into the snow, but was swiftly captured by the Germans. The soldiers were successful in blowing out the bridge, but Gunnar's fate remained uncertain. The German troops who had crossed the bridge before it blew up directed Ingrid and Ole back to their residence. Ingrid's ability to speak the language allowed her to build a friendly relationship with the enemy. Consul Wessau personally contacted her to assist him with translation during his meeting with Narvik's mayor. The Germans were certain that the English would not step foot in Narvik because they had occupied the country. The mayor was concerned about his people's fate, but the Germans wanted him to continue administering the town as usual. Consul Wessau asked Ingrid why she was so tense after the mayor and German officials had left. She claimed that her husband was involved in bombing the bridge and was captured by the Germans. Wessau agreed to speak with the director about the significance of Ingrid's contributions. While showing her vulnerability to the Germans, Ingrid continued to meet with the English consul. The English consul wanted to utilize Ingrid's relationship with the German consul to obtain blueprints of German artillery sites hidden in town. They needed it to strategize their defense against Germany. Ingrid got stranded between the two countries. As a wife and mother, she was primarily concerned with saving her family, and she was willing to win favors on both sides. She discovered where the maps were stored, but before she could take any action, the English destroyed the German fleet. She and her family escaped and joined the rest of the village in the secret tunnel. Later, she returned to the hotel to complete her responsibilities and asked about Gunnar with Consul Wessau. He refused to assist her since the Germans were under tremendous pressure following the fleet attack. Ingrid now had even more motivation to risk her life in order to get the maps. She got hold of the maps and delivered them to the English. The Englishmen could not thank her enough for her bravery. When she returned, the town was blasted. Her house was entirely demolished. Aslak was killed in the explosion. Ingrid was relieved to discover her kid beneath the ruins and take him to the tunnel. Meanwhile, French and Polish forces struck from the north and south, undermining the German grip. Gunnar, who was being used as a human mule to bring supplies to German troops stationed in the highlands around Narvik, was able to murder the Germans who kidnapped him with the assistance of French troops. He got united with his company, but the thought of losing his son made him nervous. He was desperate to get back to Narvik, to his home and family. Ingrid and Ole were now living in the tunnel. The Germans were aware that someone had assisted the English with intelligence on which buildings to target in the city, and Wessau was looking for the English consul. He added that the only way to prevent Narvik from further damaging the country was to force the English to leave. Ole was injured during the blast, and his wound hadn't healed. When Ole's body temperature was exceedingly high and he had stopped responding, Ingrid took him to the hotel to seek help from the German consulate. He declined to call the doctor because several wounded German soldiers need his attention. Desperate to gain the consul's favor, Ingrid revealed the English consul's location. Ole underwent surgery, and his life was saved. In order to spare Ole's life, Ingrid betrays her people. Every Norwegian in Narvik looked down upon her. The French and Norwegian soldiers went on to retake Narvik, and Gunnar was tasked with destroying the cannon. Despite the Norwegian army's fear of the Germans' extensive use of machine guns, their major encouraged them to keep fighting. Gunnar planned another strategy for attacking the Germans, which proved successful. French and Norwegian forces took the hill and pulled down the Nazi flag, while Gunnar celebrated his victory with his fellow soldiers. Consul Wessau notified Ingrid that her spouse had died. He gave her the list of prisoners of war, and Gunnar's name had been scratched off. The German consul wanted to take Ingrid with him to Berlin since he knew his country was planning an air raid on Narvik, but she became too consumed with the news to process his request. She was persuaded by her colleague Polly to leave Narvik with her son. Ingrid and Ole headed to their wrecked home to gather whatever little remained. Ingrid was astonished when she saw Gunnar standing at the door. It was the most unexpected meeting, and Gunnar had many questions to answer. After arriving at Narvik, he discovers Ingrid's betrayal of the nation and requests that she explain the truth to him. Ingrid had no remorse for her actions. After all, she did what she had to do to protect her kid. She couldn't leave Ole to die when she knew there was a way to save him, even if it meant acting against her country's interests. Gunnar looked down at Ingrid, just like the rest of the town. The Germans began air raiding the town, so Ingrid decided to flee with her son. Gunnar joined his group as he saw his family depart. He became emotional when Major Omdal urged the soldiers to battle for everything they valued. As he watched his family leave, Gunnar lost all motivation to fight. The English had fled, the French were preparing to defend their country, and the Norwegian army was left to defend themselves. Gunnar was careless about heroism. All he wanted was to be with his family. He went to the ferry to join his family as they left the country. Norway's key geographic location drew the interest of both the UK and Germany. They pressed Norway's strong neutrality and intended to invade the country. Germany and Britain traveled to Norway to occupy it, but Germany arrived first. Narvik was a port town and the principal outlet for Swedish ore, therefore controlling it was vital. While the Germans were successful on land, the British naval force assumed command at sea. The Norwegian troops posed a further threat to the Germans by destroying the Nordal Bridge. Despite numerous failures, the Germans continued. The British and French troops withdrew as the events in France took precedence. On June 8, 1940, the Norwegian army was forced to surrender their weapons. The English and French left Narvik without consulting the Norwegian authorities. Despite the fact that it was only for a short time, the Narvik War is considered Hitler's first defeat.